Ndzaba Nkosi silo semhlaba sithi umchudzelwano wemidlalo wemadubane lokuyimbube marathon kufanele ukhule ugcine sewukhicita tihlabani telive letitawuchudzelana netingijimi letikhaliphile emichudzelwaneni lephakeme emhlaba wonke jikelele. Silo semhlaba siphefumule
abalele etinkhulungwaneni letisihlanu basubathi bakuleli nangephandle labangenele umchudzelwano wembube Kings Marathon walonyaka. Lo mchudzelwano lo wasungulwa silo semhlaba unetinsika letisihlanu lekito kubalwa kuhlanganisa sive kwesekela kuthuthukiswa kwemidlalo wematubane kuleli kwakha emathuba ukuthi tingijimita kuleli tiphakamise lithalente lato nekuthuthukisa lihlangothi lwetekuvakasha. Kube kuhle kwadzela njengoba ngaphandle kwekuchudzelana kwabomkantshubovu kube khona nesive lesithethe lithuba lekushukumisa umtimba kanti lokube kuhle ukuthi abakasaleli ngaphandle bogogo nabomkhulu nesive lesikubatekile njengoba kusifiso semakhosi ukuthi lo mchudzelwano ube ngulolo ngakhethi. Lo msebenzi ungenelwe abantu abenkosi nalobambe kubanguvunankulu welive sikhulu umgwagwa Gamethe. Silo semhlaba sithumise sive ngekuphuma ngetinkani sesekele lo mchudzelwano lesilo sithi kumele ukhule ukhicite tihlabani telive letitawungenela imincintiswano yemhlaba.
Ninebekunene inkosi ithi live ilithume ukuthi libe sesigabeni samavela athuthukile emhlabeni. Nakwenyuka lizinga lenhlalo eveni kumele netemidlalo tenyuke. Ingwenyama igcizelele kwekuthi akusiko-ke kamphela ndzaba la. Ibheke kwekuthi emaswati afake imbela emandla aze ayomelela live emincintiswaneni lemikhulu yemhlaba kule Big Five. The IBMW Berlin, eJalimane, eNew York, eChicago, eBoston, America, neLondon Marathon. Kule BMW Marathon leyendeke itolo loku kuphumelele umKenya kulabadvuna kulabasikati kwaphumelela umTopiya lokusho kona ukuthi nawe sive lesimnyama lesinsundu awumncinyana. Yebo kuthiwa lamave lalembo asemihlabeni lephakeme kakhulu kunelwandle ngako lo moya lokhona awuphefumuleki. Ngiko lokwenta kube melula nasebabuye lakithi ukuthi bahlabane. Benda lokhu kwekuthi you train hard to fight easy. Njengoba nebemdzabuko balelive besuka eMbo ithi ke inkosi njengoba nedla libombo yehlehlетela eMbo kuchaza kona ukuthi lendvo isengatini thina satalwa nayo.
Lobambe kubanguvunankulu sikhulu umgwagwa Gamethe udumise silo semhlaba ngekuthuthukisa temidlalo uthi ligalelo lesilo lisetawe nabelana kuleminye imidlalo.
Sihalalisele imbube emhlaba sibonge imbube emhlaba kuthi kubone kukuhle ukuthi sive semaswati sishukumise umtimba njengoba lamhla sila kumbube marathon sitoshukumisa umtimba seyesihlanu imbube marathon mfana nkosi yaqala azange size slove solo sida khona la siyethemba njengekuchubeka kweminyaka kutaba khona lamanye imidlalo kule the different disciplines la khona tennis lapha nalapha kutaba khona lokho ngekuchubeka kweminyaka.
Umphathi wenhlangano yedlelani Mfongeni lokungiyona ichizo lomchudzelwano wematubane umvane nkosi lenkokhelo udumise boholi besilo semhlaba lobubuka kadze bufinyelele nakito temidlalo udumise nendlovu yemhlaba ngekusungula lihlangothi lolubuke bogogo nabomkhulu kulomchudzelwano.
Sibonga ke ingwenyama indlovukazi nge 3.3 kilometers yayingekho bekunene indlovukazi leyaqala lokuthi bogogo nabomkhulu nalaba ngabone emehlweni nalabamba ama wheelchairs bavele bangene lapha ku 3.3 asisha letandla lenzaba leyo manje nje emngwane ngositawubika kuye gogo wesive ukuthi bathi labo gogo bamfunela eceleni bafuna ukuqala naye bawine naye.
Ingijimi lehlabene lebakhombisa titsenze icosha inkomishi bona baqosha titsenze tayo kube ngusiphamadla nkosi waseNingizimu Afrika kanti uhlonyiliswe silo semhlaba ngekuthuma yona inkosatana. Lebika kwetindzabeni ngisandile Makhanya enkundleni yesive kaSomhlolo kaLobamba.
Kanti-ke umbiko ngalabahambe embili kuyo imbube Kings Marathon utaba setindzabeni temidlalo sisachubeka nato tindzaba. Kanti-ke kuletinye elikhulile linani labomake labaphumelele elikhetfweni esigabeni selilunga lephalamende kanye-ke nendvuna yenkhundla kuleli elikhethweni lwalonyaka. Lohola libandla lemave lasentansi ne-Afrika i-Southern African Development Community, His Excellency Enoch Kavindele, uthi nanoma kunjalo kepha-ke lesibalo sisengakefiki kuleso lesibhekekile. Kavindele bekhuluma eRoyal Villas ezulwini uma etfula umbiko wekucala welibandla lakaSADC ngelukhetfo.
The mission noted that the representation of women in elected political positions in the country is minimal.
Uthi bobabe labaphumelele elukhethweni esigabeni sendvuna yenkhundla kanye nelunga lephalamende balinganiselwa ku-86% kanti bomake benta 14% lokukhomba kukhula nga-11% nakucatsaniswa neminyaka wanga-2018 lapho bomake beba ku-3%.
The positioning of the ballot booth was such that it did not strictly guarantee the secrecy of the voter at some polling stations. You could see, if you wanted to, that there were some where you couldn't jump over to see what was voted. So those were clear. The mission finally commends the people of the Kingdom of Eswatini for maintaining a peaceful political environment during the pre-election and on voting day. The mission will release its final report after the validation and proclamation of final results.
Lelibandla liphindze lancoma ukuthi libandla le-Elections and Boundaries Commission libuke indlela lengcono yekuvota letawucinisekisa kwekuthi lomunye umuntfu akaboni ukuthi lomunye ukhethe bani. Libandla lakaSADC lithi live libambe lukhetfo ngendlela lencomekako kakhulu kepha lokunye lokufanele kulungiswe ukuthi kuhlanganiswe imithetho lesikhombisa lephatselene nelukhetfo khona itawusebenta kangcono. Etindzabeni Eswatini TV kubika nelisiwendla ngamandla nginaThemba Shabangu ezulwini.
Inkhundla semaseyisini ibe ngiletinye tinkhundla lekhonileke ukuthi ikhiphe make lotawuba lilunga lephalamende elikhethweni lolukhulu. Kanti-ke lo make lophumelele nguNokuthula Dlamini usitshele kabanti ngemithetho lafuna kudlala ligalelo lelibonakalako kuyo kuthi-ke igcine ishayiweve.
Emabhuku emlandvo wenkundla yasemaseyisini ayakhomba ukuthi akukake kwaba nelunga lephalamende kule nkundla lelingumake eminyakeni lendlulile. Kodwa-ke lonyaka lenkundla ivula likhasi lelisha njengoba lophumelele esigabeni selunga lephalamende ungumake longuNokuthula Dlamini. Umsakato wetitfombi yeSwatini TV ukhulumisana naye kutfola liphupho lanalo ngale nkundla.
Yawu Nkosi yami ngisethembisa nje ukuthi singethembe ngiyoshaya imithetho letawukhuphula umnotfo welive lakangwane. Ngaleyo ndlela nase umnotfo welive ukhuphukile kuyawutfutfuka timpilo temaseyisini tabomake tabobabe talabakhubatekile tabogogo tabomkhulu tetintsandzane nebafelokati konke kubased lapha ekukhuphukeni kwemnotfo nasekushaywe kahle leyo mithetho. Ngithembisa ke nekusirepresenta kahle eParliament ticelo taso ngitikhuphule ngehlise tidzingo taso ingathi tinsita letibuya ku-government ngitilethe emangweni. Ngiyabethembisa ukuthi lokho ngitawukwenta kahle. Ngiyabonga kakhulu le ndlela labangisapothe ngayo ikakhulukazi umphakathi wami wakadlovunga ungimangalisile uphume wonke kudelo ngakaphumi ngisho nalesinelidolo siphumile nemmango ke wonke wasemaseyisini ungimangalisile ngimangele ngisamangele.
Nokuthula Dlamini uphuma emphakathi wakadlovunga kanti yabelunga lephalamende lesifundza saseshiselweni kuphalamende lesanza kuphuma. Lobika-ke tindzabeni Eswatini TV nguthando kuhle Mdluli nginasipho mavimbela emaseyisini.
Somnotho lofundzisa tifundvo temnotfo enyuvesi yelakuleli Sanele Sibiya uthi iphalamende lensha letongena ayingasuki elunyaweni lwephalamende lephumile el-11 ekuqinisekiseni ukuthi umnotfo welakuleli uyachubeka ke nekukhula. Lokhu kulandzela kutsi lephalamende lephumile ikhulise umnotfo welakuleli wagcina ubalelwa kuleli 10 lekhulile.
Lana kusadzinga ukuthi sichubeke la kugcine khona lena phalamende lephumile kuze sikhone silive ukuthi salesicala sicabanga ukuthi umnotfo singawenta kanjani ukuthi ugcine sewusebentela onke emaswati. So lokhu kungaba ke kusho ukuthi singakujabula nangaba nekuchubeka nekuthi actually kube nekuchubeka nekufaka emandla ikakhulu kule ICT. Singene sibuke ne-manufacturing ukuthi singayenda kanjani ukuthi sithole indlela leti tawubalansisa i-skilled labor naleko ukuthi sifake i-capital intensive sifake le capital kule production process yelive kuze sitawukhona kuthathana ngemaswati la ngasakhoni la solo ahleti angasebenzi bese sekuba nekubuka ukuthi singenda kanjani lokwenyusa i-value addition kule tinfo lesitendako ikakhulu ku-agriculture na-agro processing nakuto tonke nje tinhlangothi leti khona kulomnotho wakangwane ukuthi sizame ukuthi sale sinyusa ukuthi singasahambisi ukuthi sihambisa shukela anguye nje sidame ukuthi sihambisa mhlambe bo-icing sugar noma yini lamanye ema-products sanzise le production la ekhathekhaya kungathi kuphinde bese sesi-importer letinfo lesitihambise thina kusekhona lesingakwenda so lesingakucela nje nyalo kule parliament etawungena kubuka leto tinhlangothi la singanyusa khona le value addition ukuthi kube kunengilo lokwenteka khona la ekhathekhaya bese sesibuka netinhlangothi ukuthi ezisikhulisa lo mnotho le live silithengisa kanjani singalithengisa njengelive lelitawuchubeka ukuthi lihlanganyise le capital nalama skills la kakhona la iveni.
Make labaphumelele kuba ngemalunga ephalamende batawusita kuvala tikhebesi letikhona etinhlangothini letahlukene kufaka ekhatsi kuthula nemitsetfo lemidzala letsingake kubuketwa lingasahambisani nemtsetfosisekelo welive. Lokhu kuvetwe ngumcondzisi wemkhankaso i-1 Billion Rising Campaign Colanhlatshwako ananatelwa ngumabhalane welitsango lwakangwane Joyce Gama.
Basiphohlongo bomakela bahambe embili elikhethweni lalonyaka esigabeni selilunga lephalamende lesekubeka lizinga labo kulokulishumi ekhulwini 14%. Umthethosisekelo welive wona uthi ababe ngilokungenani ngilongemashumi lamathathu ekhulwini 30% wemalunga endlu yabayisikhulu. Umcondzisi wemkhankaso wemhlaba i-1 Billion Rising Campaign ligatsha lalapha elivekatini le-Afrika Colanhlatshwako uthumise imimango ngalokusekela bomake wase uyaveta ukuthi ngutiphi letikhebesi letawuvaleka ngalokwenyuka kwetinombolo tabomake labangena ephalamende.
Kwekucala indzaba yekuthi sitibuke kabanti tindzaba tetempilo siyakholwa ke ukuthi sebafikile ephalamende efakasa bomake labangu-8 ngiletinye tindzaba labatatishugumisa indzaba yetemfundo indzaba lesesimeni lesibucayi kakhulu ledzinga kusukumelwe etulo siyakuthemba naloko ukuthi batakubuketa siyayibuka nendzaba yeteminotho.
Mabhalane welitsango lwakangwane Joyce Gama ubongelela bomake
kusenemsebenzi lomkhulu lokufanele ukuthi siwende sibomake ukuthi sijinge sichubeke sikhuthatane ukuthi bomake bakhethwe nabo babe sisho njalo kubo phela sisho kona ukuthi silingane.
Labo make labasiphohlongo labahamba embili esigabeni selilunga lephalamende ngusibongile Mamba wakumthambama Shonet Henwood Shiselweni 1 Jane Mkhonda wasenkundleni yaseMbabane West nomkhosi Masuku waseludzeludze nomalungelo Similane wasesiphofaneni Zanele Mashaba wasenkundleni yakalomahasha nokuthula Dlamini wasemaseyisini kanye nalomalanga Dlamini wakumangcongo. Edinsabente Eswatini TV kubika Samkelswe khoza ngasikhumbuzo Dlamini kamanzini.
Sabelo Dlamini lolisekela lamabhalane welibandla letincola lelifutsa sive uthi bayakutfokotela kuhamba embili elikhethweni kwemalunga abo esigabeni selilunga lephalamende ngoba tinkinga letikhungetse kusebenta kwetimoto letitfutsa sive sebatawutikhulumisa kangcono ephalamende. Dlamini bakakhuluma nebetindzaba ngelisonto.
kuvele njengetindzaba letimnanzi kumalunga elibandla letincola letitfwala sive kulandzela kutsi emalunga abo aphumelele lukhethweni esigabeni selilunga lephalamende. Lisekela lamabhalane kuleli bandla Sabelo Dlamini litsi liyakholwa kutsi tinkinga lebesolo tikhona sebatawutilungisa batisebente njengoba sebatawubeba kuyo indlu lehloniphekile kantsi-ke futsi bamalunga batati kahle hle.
Oke kusho ukuthi tinkinga lesinato lesiyi-transport industry sesitakhona kulobhisha kubo kakhulu bayisebente ngendlela labayatiko ngoba solo sinabo akusho ukuthi basephalamende nje abasekho la kule business lesikuyo. Inkinga lekhona nje indzaba yapetrol, ukukhula kwapetroli besicabanga ukuthi besinesifiso lokuthi endzabeni dema-bus fares ungathi beyingaphumi ephalamende ibuye ibe ne-special committee letawudzingidza ukuthi ukhule kangaka petroli imali kumele seyi-charge ingimalini. Lokunye lokungaba khona indzaba yebashayeli bethu lokwenzakala ukuthi kunetindzaba lokumele ukuthi bakhushulelwe timali nabo ndlelandvongeni. Ngicabanga ukuthi those issues batawubatutane nato batisebente bese batibisa kithi ukuthi bona basephalamende nje batibona ukuthi singatisebenta kanjani.
Uthi-ke nanoma sebangena ephalamende kodwa-ke solo bangiwo emalunga e-council ngako-ke tindzaba batawube batati kabanti ikakhulukazi letikhungetse tona-ke tincola letitfwala sive. Etindzabeni ngingiyani Msibi nginasimuva Shongwe enhlambeni.
Baholi betinhlangano temabandla batsi baholi bemabandla labaphumelele elikhetfweni lwelive kufanele kutsi babe mahlahlandlela entfutfukweni yalelive. Lokhu kubetwe ngusihlalo wenhlangano ye-Eswatini Council of Churches Archdeacon Bekubandla Magongo kanye-ke namengameli wenhlangano ye-African League of Churches Archbishop Samson Hlatshwako uma baxoxisana nalo msakato wetitfombe.
Labaholi betinhlangano temabandla bathe kuyabatfokotisa kutsi likhetfo lihambe kahle njengaloku lazi nalicala balithandazela. Labaholi bathi kungena kwebazalwane kuhulumende kuyintfo lenhle.
Abafaka umfutho balalele laba bathumile basebentele laba bathumile bathuthukise lenkundla yabo kakhulu kufuna lenti inkundla tithuthuke kuvuleke imisebenzi kuvuleke amabhizinisi atawuvula ngekukhuluma kwabo bese babe ungalapha kunetikhwama ingwenyama leyabusisa ngato abakhulumele ukuthi lesikhwama ngathi kasiyakhuphuka kutothuthukisa tikudla tothuthukela kube lula.
Siyethemba-ke ukuthi lo sebangenile nje baholi bemabandla batabasibonelo lesihle kubo bonke labanye nakuwo onke emalunga njengephalamende nakuyo yonke lemikhakha lekhona eveni yokusebenta buqopho indvuna yenkundla intuthuko le-Kusile njengelive sitayibona ngoba nebaholi belibandla babambe liqhaza lelitsite. Siyakhuthata-ke ukuthi asibambisaneni sichubeke njengelive sibambisane silakhe live leMaswati silakhe ngekuthula liphumelele.
Labaholi bathi kumcoka kutsi uma labazalwane sebasetigabeni tepolitiki baqinisekise kutsi abalahli livangeli etindzabeni kubika Fortune Dlangamandla ngisembabane.
Etindzabeni temidlalo Siphamandla Nkosi waseveni leNingizimu Afrika uhambe phambili esigabeni se-42 kilometers kuyimbube Kings Marathon kubobabe. Kanti-ke kubomake Loveness Madziva waseZimbabwe nguye lohambe embili. Laba lababili-ke batfole imali lengu-30,000 emalangeni umuntu amunye.
Imbube marathon yemidlalo ematubane ibuyile kulomnyaka lapho khona bese iyesihlanu njengoba solo yaqala ngeminyaka wa-2016 kanti yagcina kubanjwa ngeminyaka wa-2019 njengoba ngeminyaka wa-2020 kwabe sekubhedvuka umkhuhlane we-COVID-19. Umqhudelwano walonyaka bowuhlukaniswe ngetigaba letine lokuyi-42 kilometers, 21 kilometers, 10 kilometers kanye ne-3 kilometers. Noma kuselimakhada ngelisonto kodwa tingijimi tiphume ngetinkani njengoba babe ngetulu kwemakhulu lasihlanu labangenele yona imbube marathon. Siphamandla Nkosi waseveni laseNingizimu Afrika nguye lohambe embili esigabeni se-42 kilometers kubobabe kanti Loveness Madziva waseveni laseZimbabwe kubomake nguye lohambe embili ku-42 kilometers. Kanti kube sekuhlonyeliswa ingijimi leliswati lehambe embili kubobabe kanye nakubomake esigabeni se-42 kilometers. Sandile Khumalo kanye nasamkelisiwe Thwala ngibo labahambe embili. Lo phumo basenzaweni yesibili ku-42 km kubobabe nguSiyabonga Nkondo wase-7 laseNingizimu Afrika, kwase kuthi kubomake Monica Mangich waphuma wabasenzaweni yokuqala kanzi bathole 15,000 umuva munye. Esigabeni se-21 km lohamba embili kubobabe nguKipto Laidi wase-7 laseKenya, kwase kuthi kubomake kwaba nguThabitha Thatha wase-7 laseZimbabwe kanti bona bathola imali engu-7,500 umuntu amunye. Labaphume babasenzaweni yesibili kubobabe kube ngu-Albert Khango kanti kubomake kwaba nguThobile Ngwenyama kanti bona bathola imali engu-3,500 umuva munye. Esigabeni se-10 km lohamba embili kubobabe kube ngu-Abednego Mashaba kwathi kubomake kwaba nguNomvula Sithole kanti bona bathole 7.5 emalangeni. Prince Dlovu uphuma wabasenzaweni yesibili kubobabe kanti Zanele Sekhotle kubomake kube nguye lohamba embili. Kanzi kube nesigaba se-3 km lebe singenelwe bantwana labancane nebamvu labadzala kanye nalabo labaphila ngokukhubateka. Lohamba embili kube nguChristopher Dlamini kanti uthola imali engu-3,000 emalangeni. Kwathi Simon Mathebula kanye nokuthula Mkhatshwa baphuma babasenzaweni yesibili. Lobikela umsakazo Eswatini TV temidlalo ngilinda Dlamini eMbabane.
Iqembu leManzini Wanderers lidlale ngekulingana nelicembu leMoneni Pirates emidlalweni wekubanga lidolobha lakaManzini ngaphansi kwe-MTN Premier League. Kanti lo mdlalo uphele ngemagoli lamabili ngalana nangale.
Enkundleni yemavuso kaManzini bekunemidlalo ye-MTN Premier League bekubanga lidolobha lakaManzini njengoba emidlalweni lemibili bekudlala emacembu akhona edolobheni lakaManzini. Emidlalweni lomkhulu bosemkhathini welicembu leMoneni Pirates kanye neManzini Wanderers. iManzini Wanderers kube ngiyo lethola ligoli lekuqala elishaywe nguSiphamandla Dlamini ngemuva koliphutha lanozinto eMoneni Pirates Ncena Wendlandla. Ubuyile Malibongwe Malinga wathola lekulinganisa leMoneni Pirates kodwa-ke Banele Mdluli wathola lesibili leManzini Wanderers kwayiwa ikhefini hamba embili ngamagoli amabili kulinye iManzini Wanderers. Esigabeni sesibili ahlasele lamacembu kodwa-ke bese kubonakala ngathi iManzini Wanderers seyunqobile lo mdlalo kodwa-ke ngesikhathi lesengetiwe ubuyiwe Malibongwe Malinga wathola lesibili lakhe lebekulesibili leMoneni Pirates lekulinganisa lo mdlalo. Uphelile lo mdlalo abambene lamacembu lamabili ngamagoli amabili kulamabili. Kanzi emidlalweni wokuqala lodlalelwe khona imavuso bekutholana ilicembu leDenver Sundowns kanye neManzini Seabirds. Kubebede ilicembu lelithola ligoli waphela lo mdlalo kulicanza icanzeni. Kanzi kule minye imidlalo yeRangers ikhale phasi kuMbabane Highlanders ngeligoli linye ecanzeni. Mbabane Swallows yakhala phasi kuGreen Mamba ngamagoli amane kulinye. iMadlenya incobile kuRoyal Party ngamagoli amabili kulinye. Zingizini Spurs edlala ngekulingana neZulu United ngeligoli linye kulinye. iLovo yakhala phasi kuYoung Buffaloes ngamagoli amabili ecanzeni. Lobikela umsakazo Eswatini TV temidlalo ngilinda Dlamini enkundleni yasemavuso kaManzini.
Nkosi Sibahlola Market Sitawubuya sichubeke nehlelo.
Sibinze senimukele siyakuvuselana olosanza kusivulela sichubeka nalo hlelo nje butakhumbula ukuthi besivedile ukuthi sidabe sinidlalela iclip yalabo beba observer ukuthi umsebenzi olikhetho lapha eSwatini uhambe kanjani. Bakhulumile nje kancane etindzabeni sakumele ukuthi bekukhona baka SADC baka AU naletinye nje tinhlangano sifuna nje kundlalela iclip yalo hola libandla la ka AU Bankhole Adiyoye athula nje lokho lakubonile elikhethweni sesimlalele ukhuluma wathini.
You all know, preparations for the elections began early, and we commend the high level of delivery by the EBC. Though the commissioners in the EBC were serving their first term in office, they brought new energy to the institution, and this could be seen from what we all witnessed on the 29th of September. Voter registration. The EBC conducted a voter registration exercise from 10th of May to the 14th of June 2023. This was further extended till 18th of June 2023. It is important for us as the mission to also note with satisfaction that over 313,085 of the voters, equivalent to 54%, were women. The mission also noted that some stakeholders' concerns about the absence of voter registration cards were also recorded. Election campaign. The Electoral Act makes organized elections to be organized by the EBC. General campaigns were conducted under the confines of the law. Inclusive participation. We note with satisfaction the specific laws supplementing Section 95 and 96 of the Constitution, pushing for special election of women members of the House of Assembly. For us, as the AU mission, that despite the existence of this enabling legal framework, there appear to be lack of political will to address inclusivity, particularly the participation of women and the youth. Civil society organization. Civil society played an important role in participating in the electoral process, in educating voters, monitoring and evaluation. However, we also noted that the interaction with the EMBs and competent authorities were not at the highest level. In fact, some civil society had called for the boycott of the electoral process. But it's yet to be seen, according to us, by the time we present a final report on the impact of the call for boycott, given that the EBC will eventually present the voter turnout. Electoral dispute resolution mechanism. We note that the EBC is empowered by law to handle any disputes that may arise among stakeholders in the electoral process. We note that the submissions by some stakeholders in Eswatini on their lack of confidence in the judicial route for the resolution of disputes was also a point of attention. Candidate nomination. Candidates were nominated and conducted in all the 331 polling divisions, and 1,616 were nominated for parliament. For us, as the AU, we note that the Constitution did not prohibit formation for political parties, but that individual candidates were identified for the various 3 levels of electoral process. Critically, on election day, we observed the following. We deployed to all the 4 regions of the kingdom And we are very pleased that all our observers went to the field and returned safely. Opening of the polls. We observed 16 polling stations on opening day, and 75% of these polling stations opened on time. This is a credit to the voters, to the polling staff, and of course to EBC for making sure that they reach the benchmark. However, there were delays in 25% of the polling stations that we witnessed. Many of the reasons for the delay attributed mainly to late arrival of voter roll, and in some cases, this exceeded 1 hour. Polling staff demonstrated sufficient knowledge of the opening procedure. Ballot boxes were properly sealed, and the polling stations were set up in a way that ensured smooth processing of voters, meeting the principles that the African Union adhered to. However, we also noted some inconsistencies in some polling stations, given the role of the presiding officers, who did not begin the procedure, citing the need for the presence of agents of the candidates or local observers. AU observer teams reported that the environment outside all the polling stations visited was peaceful, and there was the presence of police discreetly who exhibited a high level of professionalism and courtesy. Observers and party agents were present in some and absent in others. Voting process. We observed that the voting process in 221 polling stations across the kingdom. Of this, 70% were located in rural areas and 28% in urban areas. Voting processed uninterrupted throughout the day. The participation of women as polling staff was noteworthy and encouraging. Over 65% of polling staff at stations visited had female polling officials. Priority assistance was extended to elderly voters, pregnant women, and those living with disability. We witnessed that assistance was also provided for those who had to be assisted. The voting procedure and layout of the polling station in 95% of the polling stations visited allowed for a smooth flow of voter and guaranteed the secrecy of the ballot. Staff demonstrated throughout the procedure a high level of professionalism regarding the verification of voters, stamping of ballot boxes, ballot papers, and the inking of voters' fingers. Most polling stations were, however, inaccessible to persons living with disabilities. And we understand this because of the topography of the kingdom. The mission also want to report that we did not witness any voter being turned away for not having prescribed identification. Closing and counting procedures. All polling stations visited closed timely, and voters who were still in the queue at the time of the closure were allowed to continue to vote. In all polling stations observed, polling staff adhered to all closing and counting procedures and completed the process with all necessary documentation. We also noted that election day operations were administered in a manner that allowed free expression of the will of the people of the kingdom. Counting was done in an orderly, professional manner in the presence of candidates and some candidate agents. Conclusion and recommendations, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. We salute the courage, the political maturity displayed by the people of the Kingdom of Eswatini. We appreciate the efforts made by government of the kingdom to consolidate democracy, promote the rule of law, and ensure that constitutionalism remains high. For us, this is in line with the 7 aspirations of Agenda 2063 of the African Union. In addition, we note that civil society and the candidates and their delegates fulfill their mission without any hindrance or obstruction by the polling staff. The mission really wants to thank the authorities of the kingdom for the steps taken to continue to improve on the democratic process through elections. Now to our recommendations. These recommendations in this part will go to the government of the Kingdom of Eswatini. We call for greater inclusion of women and youth in the political participation process, particularly as the electoral processes unfold. We acknowledge the high level of women as polling staff and encourage that this should continue. To the EBC, we appreciate their efforts to regularly communicate with stakeholders and call for greater voter education. Investment in greater political education, civic education, will of course lead to more empowered political citizenry. We seek that the EBC in the next round of elections should increase the number of polling stations. Many of the polling stations were far and in between, some requiring long distance to cover in the same constituency. And we appreciate the efforts being made, but in our view, more polling stations will assist voters to be able to exercise the right to vote freely. We also note a high level of improvement and best practice, whereby EBC provided transport for those who are in the wrong polling stations, given the distance between the polling stations. That we have never seen in many, many countries. And we salute you for providing such a service to your people. We must consider also the balance between the number of voters and one polling station to another. To the candidates and to political actors, it is necessary that you prioritize inclusive national dialogue in order to preserve the peaceful nature, climate existing now in the kingdom. We urge anyone that disputes the outcome of the elections to use the legal dispute mechanism channels for resolution. It is necessary that we continue to encourage the representation of women and the youth in the electoral process. To the civil society, they need to exercise their right more by participating directly as citizen observers. We felt lonely as observers, where in many cases we only found SADC and the African Union in the remote areas. The people of Eswatini must be their own defender of democracy. For us as the international community and the African Union, we are ready to continue to support the kingdom by providing technical assistance to promote more reform and national resilience in the electoral processes. It is clear that our efforts will continue to matter as we work together. We also want to applaud the efforts being made by the kingdom for the improvements in the counting of voters. In 2018, the African Union had proposed that counting should be done on the spot in all the stations instead of moving the ballots to the tallying centers. We are very pleased that EBC had inscribed this into law, and we could all see the result. We are also very pleased that the special voting exercise took place in Manzini few days before the election for essential workers who will not be available on election day. That is another best practice that we commend. However, we also want to place it on record that we encourage the government and the EBC that next elections, God willing, it will be better to decentralize the special voting so that not everybody will have to come to Manzini. It will be better that the 4 regions have special voting points, and this will be respected. Also, in some cases, we discovered that the results of the special voting were displayed. This would not have been ideal because it is necessary to have the voting process, the counting process, to have been finalized before, and the merger of the special voting as well as the voting day to be done simultaneously. Excellencies, for us in the African Union, these elections were peaceful. For us in the African Union, these elections reflect the principles, the high standards that we see. However, our final pronouncement will come in a month's time when we present a full report. Once again, on behalf of the chairperson of the Commission, His Excellency Musa Faki Mahamat, we, as the African Union Electoral Observation Mission, we are very pleased to have witnessed history being made in the kingdom. I will not want to take any of your questions, and more of our reports will be distributed in full in few weeks, as I stated. And once again, I really want to thank everyone, EBC, the government, the people, and of course, our very able election observers from 23 African countries who are here to support democracy at work.
Yeah, bekuyeke loyo lo hola libandla lenhlangano African Union etfula nje umbiko wayo wabo bangiyinhlangano African Union ngaloko labakubonile ekhethweni. I think nje sifiso nje lacetha nje ukukhuluma ngakho indaba yokuthi vele uyacelela ukuthi uma ngabe sitawuphenza sibambe lekhethu Eswatini asibuka nje a special voting kungahlanganyelwa enzaweni yinye ngoba takhumbula ukuthi special voting yendiwa nje enzaweni yinye emavu. So I think when the recommendations ukuthi ngileso naleso sifundza sibe ne special voting kungadinga ukuthi sibe sonke sihlangane enzaweni yinye naloko ukuthi indzaba nje ukuthi ma results of special voting akhokhwe ilanga linye I mean akhokhwe ngalelo langa ucelele ukuthi vele akhokhwe ahlanganiswe uma ngabe sekubalwa tonke letinombolo.
Yeah, it was the preliminary report, by the way. The official one is set out Pumanje in the next few days. Police update.
Do you remember the spinning thing? This is us. This picture represents what we did. We were there when coronavirus wreaked havoc in our population. Together with other stakeholders, we formed the first line, controlling the spread of the unknown and unseen enemy of the people. Anxious ourselves, we collected dead bodies countrywide. At the time when no one wanted to come near dead bodies of loved ones, we did care for our fellow citizens. Thank you, the people of Eswatini and teams of first responders.
Mongosiyake sithathe i-traffic update from Assistant Inspector Begu Muzi Kule. Makobana siphinze sikwamukele lihlelweni sicala liviki lelinsha imigwaqo beyiphithithela kakhulu kule mpelasonto. Engabe sisacala liviki nje imigwaqo ikanjani?
Mnguni anguvusele ekseni ngalokukhethekile sivusele umbukeli walolu hlelo. Sivuka ezindaweni eziningi kukhomba kuba nemkhemetelo loqinile wenda-ke ukuthi imigwaqo ibonakale imandi kukhuthatha nekugcizelela nje kakhulu kubashayeli bekunene ukuthi kulesimo lesikhona ngaphandle siyabide ukuthi umshayeli anakisise aqaphelisise ayendesiqiniseko sokuthi uyasihlonipha lesimo. Lokho-ke kuyawufaka ekhathi umtubane lo uyawuhamba ngalo uyawuhamba ngelitubane lelilingene leliya wena ukuthi uyawukhona kulawula imoto yakho lapho kuvela simo bongakasikhathi khona sikhanyise emalambu wengede umgamu wokulandzela lenye imoto lo. Sinakile kakhulu ukuthi kuleti mvula lesipenato nathi qala nje evikini eliphelile imotolo lebephuma esandleni sebashayeli tibonakele tiningi kakhulu ikakhulukazi lapha enzaweni yakumalagwane. Kungaleso sizathu-ke sithi asigcizelele nanamuhla ukuthi ihlonipha lesimo linciphise litubane lakho yengeza isikhathi sakho ukhombisa kuhleleka ungagijimisi yona-ke imotolo. Kanti-ke etibaneni tethu semgwaqo edolobheni elikhulu laseMbabane isebenza kahle. Umgwaqo wethu Longsozisa Road osuka lapha esikoleni lesikhulu seMbabane Central uye lapha kunaye i-traffic circle solo uvaliwe leyo mgwaqo loyo. Sisebenzisa-ke nasi esigatshana lesi sibelwe sona umgwaqo lo tekelitiyela lokuphize futhi kube ngumgwaqo lovuma kokuthi imoto lotiniketa nemathuba kube naye stop and go lophakanyisiwe lapho kube nasomhlolo road umgwaqo losuka lapha eTulu ngase i-court ungene khona ikhathi edolobheni lapha kosandla kunema-speed humps lafakiwe lapho. Noko-ke lawo ma-speed humps asede imidwebo lena acace noma kasheshe kubonakala useta lapha kahlwana. Sikhona-ke noko timpawu letibekiwe noma-ke letiphakanyisiwe lezinto sisiqaphelisa-ke ngalawo ma-speed humps. Lokunye lesikakugcizelela kuleyo mgwaqo loyo bekunene ngumgwaqo lomncane loteke kahle nakho lesibhida ngokuthi shoulder lengenda-ke ukuthi umuntu emise imotolo yakhe lapho noma-ke umshayeli emise imotolo yakhe kuleyo sigatshana leso. Ngakumise imotolo unciphisa wona-ke umgwaqo. Ngakho-ke bashayeli bayakhuthazwa lokho ukuthi awube kunene asimene ezindaweni letiyawuba ngilethwe letiphephile naletiyawenda ukuthi sichubeke kuhambeke emigwaqweni yethu. Nawehla intaba yakumalagwane bese sivedile ukuthi uyashelela umgwaqo njengoba kuchubeka wona-ke umkhemetelo lobonakalako. Kanti lapha kumathamba kunatiyatiba netemgwaqo lesilapha elisushwana na uqhamuka nje ungena ubuka yona i-traffic circle kanjalo netibane letlapha eceleni kwase-beverages. So timbili leti ndzawo kubonakala kunemigojana lemikhudlwanyana ekhatsi nekhatsi nato-ke tibane temgwaco leyenta bekuthi timotolo tendlule ngelitubane leliya kwangilelo leliphansi kakhulu. Siyagcizelela nje bekunene ukuthi asichubeke sibeketelelane sihloniphane kusenalezo zigodzi noma tingabonakali kahle, kepha-ke nawe uyawuda ngesivinini lesesivele uyawudiva ukuthi awu nembala setikhulile asishayele kahle-ke sisendlula kuleyo ngcingwane leyo. Lapha kaphoza na ungena edolobheni nasemanzini kule tibane leti lapha athi ukhombisi-ke umbala loluhlata ungena noma uphuma edolobheni elikhulu lakhona lapha kamanzini. Bese kusenhlangano umgwaqo wethu losuka lapha kaMjuda lo MF11 lobheka khona lapha ko-Royal Casino selovaliwe leyo mgwaqo loyo. Silandzela timpawu temgwaqo lesibekele tona letingitona tisicondisa ngemigwaqo lesingayisebenzisa-ke kwesikhashana. Kanti-ke kulonye hlangothi asibhedele kokuthi akhona ama-temporal speed humps lafakiwe la usuka khona lapha ngakafaya usonzela khona kunaliya lisonto lelikhulu lema-Muslim lelifakiwe khona lapha ngehla kwakafaya. Siyawuthi-ke timotolo zinciphise litubane isasonzela kuleyo ngcingwane leyo. Na uqhamuka lapha e-Big Bend ubuya eTulu edolobheni lakamanzini nga-M8 esiphofaneni selikhona i-traffic circle eyakhiwe lapho lesifunda sigcizelele bekunene kuhloniphana kwatise ukuthi kunezitola letinkulu letilendlula kuleyo traffic circle leyo. Kanti kuwona loyo mgwaqo loyo imijwebo yaphansi ayisasiyo lebonakalako kakhulu etindzaweni etiningi. Emehlo ethu-ke akabe ngelakhaliphile nekunakisisa ikakhulukazi etindzaweni lapho siyawendlula letinye timotolo. Kanti sawuqhamuka eTulu emathamo ubuya eTulu edolobheni elikhulu laseMbabane nga-MR1 kunema-potholes nakuloyo mgwaqo azatofika eTulu emotshane na uqhamuka khona eTulu kaho lenda ukuthi nakhona abashayeli baxwayise ukuthi abashayele ngelitubane lelisetulu kakhulu eliphansi kakhulu. Umthamo wetimotolo sowuphakeme emigwaqweni lelilanda labo labahamba ngetinyawo libonakala lingilelo lesetulu. Sisho njalo nje sithi kuphepha kwakho kuphepha kwami nasi kanye kanye sibambisene siyawukhona kunciphisa ingozi temgwaqo. Fika uphephile yena siqiniseko sokuthi konke lokwendako lokuyawukwenda ukuthi wena nalomunye losebenzisa umgwaqo abe ngilophephile. Siyabonga kakhulu Mnguni, lisuku loluhle sachubeka nemsebenzi wenu lelibandla linibambisene nalo labonjinela naso sive semaswati sisele lona lisuku loluhle. Siyabonga kakhulu.
Magobane Wandlovu, siyabonga kakhulu. Assistant Inspector Bekmuzi kule sipha nayo i-traffic update lokukhulu kakhulu nje ukuthi imigwaqo bonke siyashelela nicaphele kakhulu nisachuba dona timotolo nisaya emisebenzini sibahlo lethu makethe masinyane sitabuya netindzaba.
When you choose your adventures, you do so with an open heart and a desire for the unexpected. You embark on journeys to discover new worlds, full of wonder. You choose a path to awaken your senses, to feel the rush of life overwhelm you, a world to make you look up and realize just how inspiring this life can be. You ask, and we give you the royal experience. Arrive and awaken your heart. Explore life in ways only thought possible in your dreams. There are but a few places on earth so special, so unique, and so spectacular, where it becomes the rite of passage for the ambitious travelers, the courageous souls, to all have the one and only royal experience.
Welcome back. Let's take a look at international news. At least 13 people were killed in a fire in a Spanish nightclub on Sunday morning, officials said, with fears the toll could still rise as rescue workers sift through the debris.
Anxious friends and family members wait for an update after a deadly fire tore through several nightclubs in Murcia.
We didn't know anything.
We're waiting for news to see whether some of our family members have come out alive.
The fire started around 6 a.m. in the southeastern Spanish city at La Fonda when it was still full of people. This video released by the Murcia's fire service shows the teams entering the building as they try to get the flames under control inside the nightclub. The fire, which spread to the neighboring clubs of Teatra and Golden, caused La Fonda's roof to collapse. Eyewitnesses describe scenes of confusion.
I think we left the club 30 seconds, 1 minute before the alarms went off. And all the lights went out, the screams saying there was a fire. I was at a place at the time where I could get out, but 5 family members and 2 friends are still missing.
Several people died in the fire, and emergency services are searching through the debris for those still missing. Murcia's mayor says the city is devastated. He's declared 3 days of mourning in the tragic aftermath. The cause of the blaze is under investigation. It's believed to be Spain's worst nightclub fire in more than 30 years.
Suicide bombings ripped through 2 mosques in Pakistan on Friday, killing at least 57 people and injuring dozens more as believers marked the birthday of the Prophet Muhammad, police and health officials said.
What began as a celebration turned into a horror scene. Shoes and skull caps lay strewn on the ground near the mosque where a suicide bomber killed dozens and wounded scores more. This witness was one of the lucky ones.
I was passing near the rally when the blast happened. I don't know why or how it happened, because I lost consciousness after the blast. I was scared too.
The victims had gathered to celebrate Mawlid, the birth of the Prophet Muhammad, in the town of Mastung in Balochistan province. Another double blast further north hit another mosque in Hangu in the province of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa a few hours later. One of the explosions was so strong it made the roof of the mosque collapse, killing several and trapping others in the rubble before they were pulled out by rescuers. The regions bordering Afghanistan have been the target of attacks in recent months and years by Islamist militants seeking to overthrow the Pakistani government and impose strict Sharia law.
No group has yet claimed responsibility for a suicide bombing on Sunday in the Turkish capital. The attack in Ankara came hours before Parliament was scheduled to reopen after a recess. The Turkish president described the attack as a failure.
Cell phone video captures the moment assailants detonate a bomb at a security checkpoint near Turkey's Interior Affairs Ministry in the capital city, Ankara. The Interior Ministry's office labeled the blast as a terrorist attack that happened just hours before Parliament was to reconvene.
One of the terrorists who had a suicide bomb contraption blew himself up. The other was shot in the head and neutralized before he found a chance to blow himself up.
The Interior Minister added that he intends to visit 2 officers injured in the attack, saying neither was in critical condition. Hours after the blast, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan arrived to address Parliament. He praised the swift action by law enforcement for stopping the attackers.
The action in which 2 murderers were neutralized is the last stand of terrorism. The scoundrels who targeted the peace and security of the citizens could not achieve their goals. They will never reach them.
A senior Turkish official tells the Reuters news agency the attackers hijacked a vehicle, killing its driver about 260 kilometers southeast of the capital. The bombing was the first in Ankara since 2016. Then, groups such as Islamic State and PKK militants, both labeled as terrorist organizations by the U.S., either claimed or were blamed for attacks on major cities.
Heavy rains overnight in the northeastern United States left parts of New York City underwater on Friday, partially paralyzing subways and airports in the country's financial capital.
It's a historic deluge in the New York City area, which has drenched the locals. Heavy rainfall caused significant disruption to communities' public transport and flooded several basements. As authorities scramble, the downpour brought back the memory of Hurricane Ida, which dumped record-breaking rain on the Northeast and killed at least 13 people in the Big Apple in 2021.
This is not an ordinary rainfall. This is historic. We are on track to possibly create a new record of 10 inches of rain falling in literally 24 hours. The last time we even had this number was in 1955, and that was over a 2-day period. So this is Hurricane Ida level water.
According to the weather and city officials, by 2:30 p.m. local time, as much as 15 centimeters of rain was recorded in several areas, including Brooklyn, Lower Manhattan, and John F. Kennedy International Airport. The city had been experiencing during the week mostly steady rainfall, which triggered a flash flood in the area. As the rain briefly slowed, residents emerged from their homes to take stock of the damage and begin draining the water.
The water keep coming from the ground because there are no drainage system from this location. So all the rainwater, they are not able to drain out from this area, so it's coming into our house. You know, we are really suffering.
Systems producing more intense rainfalls have become more commonplace in many parts of the United States due to the climate crisis. Scientists say more extreme and intense weather patterns are set to become the norm across the globe as the situation gets worse.
Despite the fact that a U.S. government shutdown was averted, another week of turmoil seems to be in the making on Capitol Hill. The conservative legislator has promised to be relentless in his efforts to oust Republican House Speaker Kevin McCarthy.
The bill is passed.
The short-term funding bill that Congress passed Saturday and was signed by President Joe Biden will keep the U.S. government running until at least mid-November. But Biden warned Sunday against a repeat of the chaotic process that preceded the 11th hour adoption of the stopgap bill.
The brinkmanship has to end, and there shouldn't be another crisis. There's no excuse for another crisis. Consequently, I strongly urge my Republican friends in Congress not to wait. Don't waste time as you did all summer. Pass a year-long budget agreement. Honor the deal we made a few months ago.
But a new showdown might be on the horizon on Capitol Hill. Far-right conservatives aren't happy that House Speaker Kevin McCarthy reached out to Democrats to pass the temporary funding bill. Ousting him is now a top priority for conservative Republican Representative Matt Gaetz.
In January, to get the speakership, Kevin had to agree to certain guardrails on spending. America's lawmakers take one up or down vote on the funding of the entire government. That is crazy. That is the reason we're $33 trillion in debt. We want to move to single subject spending bills. He made that commitment. He broke it.
McCarthy's response was defiant. He appeared on CBS's Face the Nation.
So be it. Bring it on. Let's get over with it, and let's start governing. If he's upset because he tried to push us in a shutdown, and I made sure government didn't shut down, then let's have that fight.
Regardless of how that plays out, bipartisan compromises will continue to provide a path forward, said Rachel Snyderman with the Bipartisan Policy Center.
There is bipartisan compromise to support additional funding for Ukraine, to support our troops, and ensure that our border security is well funded. And so I think that we're going to see, action on those particular priorities in the coming weeks.
Ukraine and the rest of the world will be watching closely, pointed out political scientist Oscar Pocasangre.
I think longer term, we do need to focus more on a structural reform to institutions and find ways of having more political parties in Congress that would help us reach more consensus in the legislative body, as opposed to just having back and forth between these two very polarized parties.
Pocasangre noted as well that more political instability could hurt the United States' credibility as well as its economic standing.
U.S. House Republican lawmakers held their first formal impeachment hearing on Thursday, arguing that President Joe Biden used his office for the financial benefit of his family. Democrats say the inquiry has yet to turn up supporting evidence.
Republican lawmakers held their first formal impeachment inquiry hearing Thursday, arguing that members of the Biden family benefited from President Joe Biden's time in public office.
For years, President Biden has lied to the American people about his knowledge of and participation in his family's corrupt business schemes. At least 10 times, Joe Biden lied to the American people that he never spoke to his family about their business dealings. He lied by telling the American people that there was an absolute wall between his official government duties and his personal life.
But Republicans have yet to uncover any hard evidence that President Biden misused his office, and they did not present any new evidence in Thursday's hearing.
They've invited 3 witnesses to testify. Not one of them is an eyewitness to a presidential crime of any kind. Not one of them is a direct fact witness about any of the events related to Ukraine and Burisma. Not one of them has participated in the 8 months of investigation in which our distinguished chairman has publicly boasted that he received 100% of everything he asked for.
Democrats argue that Republicans are investigating Biden to distract from the indictments that encompass 91 criminal charges against former President Donald Trump.
This is all about Donald Trump and his campaign, about supporting him.
Republicans say they are rooting out corruption. A poll conducted by the Associated Press and the Nork Center for Public Affairs Research found that 1 in 3 Americans is highly concerned about whether President Joe Biden may have committed wrongdoing related to his son's business dealings.
Let's get some transparency. Let's follow the rule of law.
Some House Republicans have expressed doubt about the inquiry, saying it does not rise to the standard of removing a president from office for high crimes and misdemeanors. And other Republicans acknowledge any impeachment effort will end in the Democratic majority U.S. Senate.
We have no expectation that the Senate would vote to impeach.
If lawmakers fail to reach an agreement about funding priorities, the U.S. government will shut down on October 1st. And impeachment hearings cannot be held until new funding is passed.
Sweden's bid to join NATO is heading for a delay as Turkey's parliament starts a new session this Sunday without the NATO enlargement vote on the agenda.
Turkey's NATO allies and others had hoped for a quick approval of Sweden's bid to join the alliance when the Turkish parliament reopened on October 1st. But those hopes were dashed when Turkey's parliament schedule showed the vote is not on the agenda. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan says his country's ratification of Sweden's bid is linked to whether the US Congress approves the sale of American F-16 military jets to Turkey.
The key issue here at this point is the prospective sale of F-16 new-built F-16s and upgrade kits, F-16 upgrade kits, which have been on hold in the U.S. Congress. Certainly there is a linkage between the Swedish membership and F-16s to Turkey.
Some in the US Congress oppose the sale of the jets over concerns about Turkish threats to neighbouring Greece. Erdogan, who backs Sweden's NATO membership, now says he cannot guarantee how his parliamentary deputies will vote on ratification.
It's become like a chicken-egg story, like who should act first? Now, the United States is concerned that they could actually give the F-16s and Turkey can still not ratify. And Ankara is concerned that Turkey could drop its only remaining card and the United States may still not respond. That's the problem.
Observers say the continuing threat of Russian aggression means Washington is eager for NATO to admit Sweden. And they say a delay caused by Turkey is likely to displease the US leadership. Still, observers say US President Joe Biden's options are limited, given Erdogan's close ties to Russian leader Vladimir Putin.
They think that if they basically push Turkey to essentially carry out or be a ball player within the Western camp, that would push Erdogan over the edge, right, and throw in his lot with the Russians and the Iranians in the immediate region.
The impasse over Sweden's NATO membership is part of a more fundamental problem between Erdogan and Biden, some observers say. Since Biden has confined his face-to-face contact with the Turkish leader to brief talks on sidelines of international summits. They say this has made the resolution of ongoing bilateral problems difficult.
Erdogan just got an election, another 5 years. He's going to be the president of a country which is quite important for NATO, for the Middle Eastern politics, for the Caucasus, and for the Black Sea politics. So how long the United States can avoid to dealing and talking to this country and its leader.
But many observers warn a US-Turkish summit is unlikely as long as Erdogan continues to block NATO's enlargement.
Republican contenders to be the party's nominee for U.S. president sparred for 2 hours in their second debate on Wednesday. With the first primary less than 4 months away, all the participants are trailing former President Donald Trump in the polls.
Here they go again. With a nod to a popular line from a Ronald Reagan debate, the 7 Republican candidates took to the stage at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library in California. It took only minutes for the group to start bickering, each of them determined to break from the pack. On immigration, former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie said he would send the National Guard to join with Customs and Border Control to secure the border with Mexico. China became the enemy during much of the debate. Former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley said she would send special operations to attack Mexican drug cartels and stop normal trade relations with China until the country halts the flow of fentanyl. Biotech investor Vivek Ramaswamy on the Russian war in Ukraine said just because Putin is an evil dictator doesn't mean Ukraine is good, and went on to say China is the real enemy. Florida has banned Chinese nationals from buying property near military installations, and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis says he supports a similar ban across the United States. Missing from the debate was the Republican frontrunner, former President Donald Trump, who chose to meet with workers in Detroit, Michigan, where United Auto Workers are striking. An NBC News survey shows nearly 60% of Republican voters choosing the former president over his rivals, with DeSantis coming in second at 16%. Afterward, the candidates continued the debate. North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum criticized the Biden administration for the recent prisoner swap with Iran.
They got 5 prisoners, we got 5 prisoners, but they also got $6 billion, which they can use to advance their terrorism. And this is the nation that is the largest sponsor of state terrorism in the world.
Former Vice President Mike Pence spoke of his former boss.
Now we see Donald Trump walking away from the very agenda that defined our administration and has defined the Republican movement over the last 50 years. I mean, where we stood tall on the world stage, now Donald Trump is talking the language of appeasement and withdrawal.
These candidates will now take a break from debating for a little over a month. The third Republican debate will be November 8th in Miami, Florida. That's a little less than a year before the general election.
A populist party that wants to stop military aid to Ukraine and is critical of the EU and NATO has won Slovakia's election. Results showed on Sunday the victory of the Smer SD party, led by former PM Robert Fico, may see the latter's return to prime ministership.
Accepting defeat, Slovakia's liberal candidate Michal Semeka said he'd still do his best to form a governing coalition after his PS party came in second with almost 18%.
The fact of the matter is that Smer is the winner, and we of course respect that, although we think it's bad news for the country. And it will be even worse news if Mr. Fico forms a government. Therefore, I will be in touch with other political leaders whose parties were elected to parliament on an informal basis to discuss ways of preventing that.
With almost all votes counted, former Prime Minister Robert Fico's Smer party has won 23% of the vote. If they can form a government, this could represent a major shift in foreign policy for Slovakia. Fico campaigned on a pro-Russia and anti-NATO message, vowing to halt military support for Ukraine.
This is the Slovakia I would like to see, not run by amateurs without experience, so that we won't be dragged into misadventures, whether with migration or the military.
The kingmaker will likely be the Hlas or Voice party, which came third with 27 seats. The left-wing party emerged in 2020 when a group of Smer lawmakers quit Fico's party. It's led by Peter Pellegrini, who became Slovakia's premier in 2018. This after Fico stepped down amid nationwide protests following the murder of journalist Jan Kuciak and his fiancée. Kusile had uncovered links between the Italian mafia and Fizzo's government. Hellas has so far kept its options open.
The United States struck security agreements this week with Pacific Island nations seen as a key part of U.S. plans to counter China's territorial expansion. But after 3 years of negotiations, one of those nations, the Marshall Islands, still has not reached a deal with Washington. At issue is how the agreement describes compensation for decades-old U.S. nuclear testing.
Within days of Washington providing diplomatic recognition for 2 additional Pacific Island nations, the U.S. has failed to extend economic assistance to 3 others. That assistance is part of the Compacts of Free Association, which give Washington exclusive access to large parts of the Pacific Ocean, surrounding Micronesia, Palau, and the Marshall Islands. Funds run out September 30th.
You would have to say that there was mission failure.
Howard Hills negotiated those compacts alongside presidential envoy Ambassador Joseph Yoon. He left his position September 7th. Deals with Micronesia and Palau have been reached while talks with the Marshall Islands have stalled. President David Kabua says the Republic still has one remaining demand.
But the United States must realize that the Marshallese people require that the nuclear issue be addressed.
In an interview with VOA, Hill says the State Department won't let Yoon officially designate the funds as compensation for the effects of American nuclear tests in the Marshalls 60 years ago.
If it were not for the State Department legal position, this could have been done in 2020. It could have been done in 2021. It could have been done in 2022.
The State Department declined to comment on that assertion, but tells VOA that without new funding, Micronesia and the Marshall Islands can use unspent funds or their compact trust funds to meet their budget needs. Palau still has another year of funding. Congresswoman Aumua Imada Radawagan says she saw firsthand the devastating impact of the nuclear testing on the Marshallese people. She spent part of her childhood in the Marshall Islands when her father was the head of government.
I can remember one time when he had to deliver a young boy, carrying this boy. This boy had all kinds of cancer. He had to deliver this boy to his family. And things like that stick in my mind. I was a teenager then.
Yoon has said publicly that Washington bears a moral and political responsibility to address the impact of nuclear testing. And the MOU signed with the Marshall Islands provides $700 million for a trust fund that could be used for that purpose. But Hill says the State Department legal team has refused to officially designate any funds for nuclear compensation because of broader concerns over legal liability.
Some of the players in this would rather preside over a failure that they control than over a success that they don't control. And success was in reach, and we didn't get there.
In a letter to lawmakers last week, Congresswoman Radawagan warned that China is waiting for an opening to grow its Pacific presence.
There's another large country just sitting there, keeping their fingers crossed, hoping that this deal fails so they can step right in.
Radawagan says lawmakers are ready to fund the agreement as soon as one is finally reached.
Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin returns to the U.S. Thursday after wrapping up his first tour across the African continent as Defense Secretary.
Within days of Washington providing diplomatic recognition for 2 additional Pacific Island nations, the U.S. has failed to extend economic assistance to 3 others. That assistance.
Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin started his tour in Djibouti, home to the primary U.S. military base on the African continent. There, he met with Djiboutian leaders and the Somali president, whose forces, Austin said, had made more progress against the al-Shabaab terror group in the past year than the previous 5 years combined. Austin then turned to Kenya.
How are you?
He visited a base in Manda Bay near the Somali border, where a terrorist attack in 2020 killed 3 Americans.
Message here being very clear that the war on terror still remains top on the agenda of the American government.
The American and Kenyan defense secretaries signed a 5-year security agreement to support working together against their common terror threat. Austin also pledged $100 million in support of Kenyan security deployments as Kenya prepares to lead a multinational peacekeeping mission to Haiti to combat gang violence.
Kenya is ready, Kenya is willing to lead that multinational peacekeeping force that will go to Haiti.
Austin ended his trip on Africa's western coast in Angola, the first U.S. Defense Secretary to ever visit the country. Both nations are hopeful that Angola can dump Russia as its arms supplier and opt for American-made weapons.
Africa deserves better than outsiders trying to tighten their grip on this continent. Africa deserves better than autocrats selling cheap guns and pushing mercenary forces like the Wagner Group or depriving grain from hungry people around the world.
Austin called out African military juntas without naming Burkina Faso, Gabon, Mali, or Niger. It was his most forceful rhetoric since the military removed Niger's elected president from power in July.
When generals overturn the will of the people and put their own ambitions above the rule of law, security suffers and democracy dies. Militaries exist to defend their people and not to defy them. And Africa needs militaries that serve their citizens and not the other way around.
France decided this week to withdraw its military forces from Niger by the end of the year. And analysts say the U.S. could follow suit should the Nigerian military not return the elected government to power.
Niger has become the key hub, the key center of counterterrorism operations for the U.S. and France in the region. And if it's cut back, or if it's reduced, or if it's ended, there is no other assets in the region that the U.S. can use.
The U.S. has so far kept its forces in Niger, but the Pentagon has declined to conduct counter-terror operations with Niger's military.
In Goma, a city in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, residents say plastic and other waste is increasingly polluting Lake Kivu. An initiative is keeping up some of that waste out of the lake.
Plastic pollution plagues many cities in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Here in Goma, an eastern city near the border with Rwanda, plastic waste blocks the canals of Lake Kivu and pollutes water residents use for drinking. Mukengere Bienvenue, a resident of Goma, founded Resilience for Development Group, a company that collects plastic waste and processes it into bricks used in building houses.
What motivated me is to protect the environment, and secondly, to create jobs for young people like us, and to help those who build houses so that they can get good material.
Bienvenue melts plastic waste and turns it into materials used in house and road construction. He says he now needs help building a factory that can provide jobs for young people.
There are meetings being held with many organizations in the United States, Europe, and Africa, where they can support projects like this. There are people asking them to look at Congo, because what is happening in Congo is not just a war. There are people who think about development issues to help people affected by war.
For more than a year, Kagaju Janvier has been collecting plastic waste in the Mungunga area near Goma, where cars have been dumping waste from the city and destroying farms. Janvier says his work helps support him and his family.
Personally, I have worked for 1 year in this job. It helps me earn money for food at home and clothes. But as for paying school fees for students, I see that this job helps me.
Kashimani Luhando, a customer, uses the bricks in his building projects. He says Bienvenue's business benefits the community.
This work helps young people who would have been recruited by armed groups. Here there is no sand and cement. We only use plastics. And this effort needs to be supported because it helps a lot of people.
Bienvenu says that his relatively new company makes between 200 to 300 bricks per day, not enough compared with what goes into the lake, and that he needs more people to expand his project.
It's 29 minutes before 8 o'clock. We've come to the end of our international news. Thank you for staying with us. Let's take a break. We'll be back shortly.
We spend a lot of time thinking about our physical health, toning our muscles, our abs, building our stamina. What about our brain's health? What do we mean by that? Who is at risk of poor brain health? And how can we keep our brain healthy? Dr. Tarun Dua is here to talk to us about it. Welcome, Tarun. Talk to us about brain health. What do we mean by that?
So everything we do, every thought we ever had is produced by the brain. So that means brain health is very important for us. It enables us to function well cognitively, emotionally, socially, so that we can have meaningful lives and function well productively in society. Brain health starts early in life, and it enables a child to achieve full developmental potential, to have educational opportunities, and to have economic opportunities. Our brain can be challenged by one or the other risk factors, be it lack of nutrition, be it environmental pollutants, and that means we can have a brain disorder. If you look at the neurological disorders such as epilepsy, dementia, migraine, stroke, meningitis, based on global burden of disease, they are the leading cause of disability and second leading cause of death. So therefore, if we have to function well, we need to have good life, we need to promote our brain health, we need to prevent neurological conditions.
So Tarun, talk to us about who is at risk of poor brain health.
We are all at risk, and some are more at risk than others, and I'll explain it. So for example, if we are exposed to some of the risk factors, and these starts early in life, in fact, when the child is still in the womb, the health of mothers, including the mental health of mothers, lack of good diet, that can impact how the child's brain will develop. And after the child is born, depending on the environment, for example, poverty, physical environment, financial security, all can impact the brain health. Then there are other risk factors in our environment. So for example, air pollution, other pollutants like pesticides, they can all impact our brain health. Infectious diseases. An example that comes to my mind is COVID-19. Many of us had brain health conditions looking at post-COVID condition that impacts our brain. Then there are a range of injuries by sports or accidents that can impact our brain health. And not to forget, if you have one of the non-communicable diseases like hypertension, diabetes, that also impacts your brain health.
So that's a long list of things that impact our brain health. Tell us, how can we keep our brain healthy?
I'll tell you 3 things you should do. One is have a healthy lifestyle, and that means at least 30 minutes of exercise. Eat healthy, balanced diet with lots of fruits and vegetables, low on sugar and salt. No smoking, limit your alcohol, and good sleep hygiene. That's extremely important. The second point I would like to make here is be socially connected and engage in meaningful activities. Connect with your family, friends, peers. Learn a new activity. For example, a new language, puzzles. These are extremely important, be it you are a child or you are an adult or you are an older adult. And third, if you have a physical health condition, go to a doctor, get it diagnosed, because you can prevent lots of brain health conditions if you are taking treatment early. A small tip to remember is what is good for your heart is also good for your brain.
So those were some great tips on keeping our brain healthy. I'm going to focus on good sleep. What would you like to do to keep your brain healthy? Talk to us about it. Until next time then, stay safe, stay healthy, and stick with science.
Tinso tethu tivikelwa ngekuthi kwekuqala kumcuka ukuthi sitipopole, sivakashele emtholampilo, siyithanze emtholampilo, upopola nje uye ungaguli ungumuntu, uyohlola ukuthi ingabe umtimba wakho usasebenza kahle yini. Lokungenani kabili ngeminyaka utipopola. Kuphindze futhi ushukumise umtimba. Ushukumisa umtimba nako kumcoka, siphindze futhi sibuke tifo lesitibalile. Once watholakala ukuthi sonato letifo leti, bo HIV, bo hypertension, bo shukela, diabetes mellitus, nako lokho waba nako, vakashela emtholampilo, landzelela kubodokotela ukuthi bathi telaphe kanjani, kutawusita ukuthi ugcine uvikele kutholakala ukuthi tinso takho setilimele. Nempilo ke kutiphatha nje nako kumcoka ngoba ukhanza ukuthi bantfu bayathanza ukuthi bese batifaka etitsakamiveni ekusebenziseni titsakamiva. Lokufaka ekhatsi tshwala namagwayi. Tonke tinhlobo tetitsakamiva. So kumcoka ukuthi ungumuntu utipopole emtholampilo kuvikela tinso takho.
When you choose your adventures, you do so with an open heart and a desire for the unexpected. You embark on journeys to discover new worlds, full of wonder. You choose a path to awaken your senses, to feel the rush of life overwhelm you, a world to make you look up and realize just how inspiring this life can be. You ask, and we give you the royal experience. Arrive and awaken your heart. Explore life in ways only thought possible in your dreams. There are but a few places on earth so special, so unique, and so spectacular, where it becomes the rite of passage for the ambitious travelers, the courageous souls, to all have the one and only royal experience. That day when you look deep into your heart and leap into an ancient world so very different from your own, where magic, beauty, and love are shared forever, then you will have a royal experience. There is just one place on earth where the people make you feel a part of their kingdom, where you just might volunteer to awaken spirits, enrich minds, and work alongside communities to build, motivate, and inspire. This is truly the royal experience. When you dream of a different world, beyond the ordinary, beyond time, Discover just how far you'll go to expand your understanding of life's greatest mysteries. There's just one place on this planet with so much to offer. Now is the time for you to have the royal experience.
Right, ngalo muhle siphindze nje sikwamukele ehlelweni sisesemele kubuka temidlalo sitawuthi nje kudlala umdlalo lomncane nalungelele kubuka nje ama-events lesibe nawo lapha eveni up to this point we're at officially the fourth quarter of the year sibone quite a lot of events lungelele because takhumbula ukuthi we had a 3-year hiatus in a lot of them because of COVID-19 and that crippled our economy, it crippled job opportunities. Kuningi kakhulu kodwa nje kulesikhathi sanyalo we do want to highlight some of these events because they have empowered emaswati batfola emathuba emisebenzi nekwakuthi nje sibona tourism yethu. I think last week nasikhuluma nayo ex ndvuna of Ministry of Tourism was highlighting ukuthi we did experience a tourism boom. We did have bushfire this year.
Yeah, bushfire nayo ibe impumelelo kakhulu sifisa. So I think nje it's one of the biggest events in Africa loko sakubonakele because it is attended by thousands and thousands of tourists kungasekho nje bamba lapha eSwatini but international tourists as well. So vele iyayiletha kakhulu imali even eSwatini. We've also had our local event iluchu nayo. It brings in a lot of money economy.
And what I liked about Luchu Lulu was how they incorporated kutsi kube ne business seminar ukuthi bantu labasha ba apply ukuthi ema business abo lamasha that haven't been seen to go out there and be seen by all these people that come from outside of Eswatini, and I think that was a great idea. But then sibona Eswatini International Trade Fair.
Oh yes, it was back.
This has been my favorite event.
A 3-year break. Trade fair ngeminyaka 2019 due to COVID-19, but this year it was back with a bang, and also bekakhona nama international exhibitors and of course local exhibitors. We saw business labancane, SMEs nabona khona bangeteka tinkapani letiningi ama universities la ngaphandle kwakuleli nakhona nje akhangisa ngemikhiqido yabo.
Heads of states too. You will remember that Eswatini International Trade Fair this year coincided with the double celebration here to Lapa Gangwane. So what we did see is King Letsia III, Afiga Naye. He went in there to witness what was happening, and the president of Taiwan, Tsai Ing-wen, Naye, came and saw some of the projects that are done by Mr. Bendi, Taiwan embassy, and strengthening our bilateral and my relations we know our relationship with Taiwan, but we then saw our cultural events.
Of course, it's 55. We've celebrated 55 years of independence this year. We celebrated 55 years of His Majesty the King's birthday. It was a lot of events, national events. Lonje sasimele kutsisala kubanjwa wona umkhosi lomkhulu welive wemhlanga. Sisamele ke pomhlanga seshiselweni so nje sita nawo lama events.
Selkhetho ngeti sahlala singakhuluma ukhetho.
Sakelive this past weekend.
Solo nje it's still the topic of conversations. A lot of people are still shocked that they won. Some of them are still shocked that they lost. Everyone is shocked. We are still recovering from the fatigue. But nje kuhle kakhulu we will be seeing our next parliament leta wenda umsebenzi lomhla kakhulu ngale inkosi ishilo ukuthi kufuna bangene tinyaweni tale parliament lephumile. Otherwise, that has been a brief highlight of some of the things lesibonile tenteka lapha eveni that has resuscitated umnotfo for sure. But asibahlole emakethe Linda Masadlamini is here sikhuluma ke temidlalo kwesikhathi sanyalo. Ngosekuthela nje imizuzu leli 13 ukuthi kubumbane insimbi yesiphohlongo lamhla kusena ke sikhulumise temidlalo nalinda Master Dlamini he's here. Ngosi, welcome to the program. What a weekend. I'm sure ukhathele kakhulu ngubone nalapha ngube marathon ugile wagijigijima, but kutemidlalo ama sports MTN Premier League, I want us to quickly look at the results and then we can discuss my log standings. Master, Madlenya versus Royal Leopard. Obviously Madlenya wasn't an expected win, for me at least. Ukuthi bashaye Royal Leopard. I don't know how you felt about it.
Yeah, ngiyabonga Sifiso ngithuba lokukhuluma uvusele umbukelo Eswatini TV. Impilo samvulena lingasho ukuthi ibeyinze yaba inkulu. Uteka indzaba ye-M10 Premier League kube nema shocks, ngingasho ukuthi kube nemphumela lithusa labanyenti bathanzi betemidlalo kuleli. Ikakhulu leyo ishow yeMadlenya neRoyal Leopard. Yes, ngasho ke evikini leliphele ukuthi Royal Leopard sengafiki lapho khona kumele ngabe ifika khona elizingeni layo lesijwayele. Kodwa ke Madlenya ngicabanga ukuthi mina Sifiso sengisho kaningi la ngasho nasibuya trade fair ngathi ngale team le kukhona letaba thusa labanyenti kusachubeka yona ileague nawubuka nje ukuthi bakhonile kunqoba ngamagoli amabili kulinye kuyo iRoyal Leopard. Ngicabanga ukuthi for them I know ukuthi even nakuleli vikulela bebawinile against a big team, but for iRoyal Leopard ngicabanga ukuthi sayiti yes it's still early, but kudliwa iMadlenya akusiko acceptable ecampaign yeRoyal Leopard, but kulamanye ama games lenye iresult lingasho ukuthi ambabane Solos Green Mamba again uyakhumbula ukuthi ku-Trade Fair Cup yakhala phasi imbabane Solos ngamagoli asithupha ecanzeni, iyabuya nyalo ikhala phasi ngamagoli lamane kulinye lokusho ukuthi nasingabeka nje in 2 games iGreen Mamba ishaye 10 amagoli, imbabane Solos yashaya linye against yona, so ngicabanga ukuthi angathi le secret labanayo beGreen Mamba kumbabane Solos, because a big team like imbabane Solos ukuthi ungayishaya amagoli angaka imidlalo lembili landzelana kukhona there's something wrong, but nje for iGreen Mamba ngicabanga ukuthi Sifiso kancane kancane sebabuya, yes bana 4 points bahleti khona ku number 5, but ngicabanga ukuthi major boost lokuthi bakhonile kushaya yona imbabane Solos. I'm impressed ngeMadlenya njengoba bese ngishido nawubuka lapha etulu ukuthi after 2 games bona bana 6 points, 2 out of 2. iRoyal Leopard bekumele ukuthi because bona sebadlala ama games lamaningi neMadlenya bekumele ukuthi at least lokungenani by 9 points batovula le gap. Denver Sundowns itolo bebadlala neMazini Sibets nabo bahleti lapha solo idefeat abayati itolo baluze ama chances lamaningi kakhulu, lebe kumele ukuthi lokungenani munye wabo between bona neMazini Sibets, ngoba nayo iMazini Sibets nayibuka ukuthi ihleti ku number 4 ina 4 points, sorry ina 5 points, itolo nabo nabadlala neDenver Sundowns njengoba sengishito ukuthi munye bekumele ukuthi alithole lokungenani ligole. Young Buffaloes number 6 itolo iwinile yona Young Buffaloes ku ilova ngamagoli amabili ecanzeni, lengicabanga ukuthi vele labanyenti bebagadzile lokho ukuthi Young Buffaloes ingawina nga 2-0, then kune imbabana Highlanders lewinile kuRangers nga 1-0 khona inhlangano nayo le result leyo. Yes, ngiyathi ukuthi ngibonile ku social media itolo bekunenkulumo letinenge labanye bakhala ngema decisions abo Rafael, but philana mkhonvo batholele ligoli layo imbabana Highlanders yanqoba kuRangers nga 1-0. Yes, Rangers now iseta wakhathati ama teams kuncane nje lokushodayo, kuncane kakhulu lokushodayo Cabo Rangers, otherwise they are coming up okay. Then Mazini Wanderers versus Monen Pirates, emanzini derby, angitisoli Sifiso ngitsangisho angitisoli ngikudecide akuyo cover le game le yona iManzini Wanderers nayo iMonen Pirates. excuse me, le game le ngicabanga ukuthi from the get go nje ibonakele ukuthi imanzini derby inemagoli konke yes ama fans bekangekho kanganani stadium but nawubuka the way the teams ladlale ngayo yes goalkeeper Monen Pirates uyisitile kakhulu imanzini Wanderers itolo and lama mistakes ngiwabonile yena ncanawo ndlandla itolo ama mistakes abemanyindana but kunana umdlali nangu lokulon from Dunmamba nanguya banele mdluli bani lo shaya legoli leli ngihlale ngisho is one of ema players mina ngingcoach ngingaba nendlela yokuthola ukuthi asebente atokhona ukuthola lamagoli uyadlala is a number 9 then yona iMonen Pirates yakhona ukuthi ibuye ithole equalize late in the game esikhathi lesengetiwe labanyenti ngibonile na social media ukhona lebesa update ukuthi yona imanzini Wanderers incobile nga 2-1 ngalothi ukuthi 90 minutes solo ihamba phambili yona imanzini Wanderers but the resilience lekhonjiswa ngiyo iMonen Pirates itolo against imanzini Wanderers ukukhombisile lothi vele idebi mbamba le ngilele sikufuna ke vele
one player shining for Monen Pirates master that brace am I correct?
Yes. And
the composure, especially for the second goal, even though there was a deflection. I think umdlali naye lokufuna ukuthi simnikete nje brief highlight.
Yes.
What a good player.
Ngicabanga ukuthi iMonen Pirates isifiso ithi tena kuqala le season washo coach iCupboard wathi abasidingi striker. And sabane ukuthi uthini coach because naku abakhoni kwathola ema chances bawathola ama chances but abakhoni kwashaya amagoli but ngicabanga ukuthi itolo bese sikayashintsha lokho yena coach kwajustify ukuthi why akasidingi striker ku Monen Pirates ngicabanga ukuthi idlale kahle njengoba ngisho idlale kahle kakhulu iMonen Pirates itolo nemanzini Wanderers but the decisions ngibevile even some of ama officials akhala ngama decisions ayo a technical bench yayo imanzini Wanderers because le game yayitolo bekumele ukuthi bayiwine or else because iMonen Pirates ikhave late bekumele ukuthi le game bakhona kuyi-manager bayiwine bangayitholi i-draw against Monen Pirates.
Yeah, Master, not much to talk about in the DStv Premiership. Maybe just to quickly highlight the scores. Swallows beat Amazulu 2-1 on Friday. Amazulu got a red card. Cape Town City beating Cape Town Spurs in that Cape Town derby 3-1. They cruised 3-1. Polokwane City 1-0 over Royal AM. A lot of the other games postponed, but TX Galaxy and Richards Bay, Matrawile Bona. We can quickly maybe look at the log standings. I'm looking at the time, Master. We can quickly look at the log standings. Mamelodi Sundowns still at the top. Postponed game.
6 out of 6. 6 out of 6
flawless
ngasho sifiso after 3 games ngathi lo 9 points lesimtholile iMamelodi Sundowns seyisho ukuhamba because nawubuka ukuthi inyalo kune gap ya 10 points lekhona nyalo already akadlalwa ngisho 10 games but kune gap ya 10 points ngicabanga ukuthi Mamelodi Sundowns by November next month itabe say November December itabe say winile ileague but bekune game Cape Town Spurs ne Cape Town City yawina ke yona iCape Town City Cape Town Spurs ikorecala kule game le labanengi bebathi maybe Cape Town Spurs ingayithola ifirst victory yabo kule season but ayikakhoni bekuyiderby yase Cape Town kuyena coach Sean Bartlett tinvate mhambele kahle ngala ku Cape Town Spurs ngicabanga ukuthi sooner or later kudinga ukuthi bayithole that le win letabanika
booster
le moral yabo ngicabanga ukuthi otherwise yena Sean Bartlett is a good coach but nje when the passing management ukuthi ingamsayineli badlali because the same team ledlalako la the same team lebeyidlala ka National First Division.
Cape Town City will face Kaizer Chiefs tomorrow at 7:30 p.m. but we'll talk about that game uma seyidlaliwe master. Ngifuna nje sibuye masinyane sekude sikhathi English Premier League. A lot of people were disappointed, particularly abantu labahlala Manchester side of England, Master, because both Manchester teams lost this weekend. But yeah, this is match day 7 of 38 for the English Premier League now. My results are
Esfiso ingicabanga ukuthi idolobha leli cishe ngathi lijabulile this kule weekend le idolobha lase London because Spurs London not London, Arsenal not London, West Ham London. But ukhuluma nge Liverpool Liverpool Everton badliwe Liverpool yadliwa Spurs Everton yadliwa Luton Town. Imagine ithola first win ku Luton Town khona but this game ye Spurs ne Liverpool ngivise ebhlungu le game angifavor Liverpool kodwa kuthola ema red card ku 68 minutes bebana 2 ema red card score ku 1-1 but Spurs sizathola that winning goal nge added time ku 95 plus minutes nge on goal yamatip cabanga kudlala over 20 minutes ni ishota nga2 ebadlali kodwa nikhona kulwa ne Spurs and Sfiso ngisho ukuthi iLiverpool kube le game le beyiphelele beyitayewina le game le yayo iTottenham Spurs but lamanye ama games Manchester United ikhale phansi ku Crystal Palace nga 1-0 and coach wayo Manchester United Roy Hodgson coach wokuqala ukuthi angakhali phasi Old Trafford imidlalo lesikhombisa kulandzelana Wolves versus Manchester City Wolves kushilo Pep Guardiola ukuthi bastrugglisha ekhabo Wolves iwinile nga 2-1 yona iWolves Aston Villa ngicabanga ukuthi iresult of the weekend le Aston Villa yashaya yona iBrighton iteam le baneng labe bangacabanga ukuthi ingadliwa kangaka 6-1 yes Ansu Fati uthola igol lakhe lekuqala ku EPL but Watkins ushaye hat-trick kule game le Manchester City solo ihlete etule esicungweni iyalida ngema point lang 18 Tottenham yalandzela ine Arsenal babambene Liverpool beyine chance ukuthi nayiwina ku Spurs ihambe yohlala etule esicungweni but akende kuloko Aston Villa ngicabanga ukuthi Unai Emery is doing a wonderful job kona ku Aston Villa Brighton ilose yabo against Aston Villa ngicabanga ukuthi bendele pass then West Ham nayo kancane David Moyes uyayizama uyayipheka le team Newcastle isikhathi lokunengi kubo after last season ukuthi benyuke bahlalela kungenani lapha ku top 4 yona iNewcastle United.
Most remarkable for Manchester City to be still at the top. Kanzi ke bona sebakile badliwa with the two teams abalange phansi abakake badliwe bona. But just 2 draws are putting them below Manchester City.
Yes, and the next game weekend Arsenal versus Manchester City.
It's going to be the biggest game so far this year.
Yes, and asikatsile ukuthi mhlambe lokungenani but buka lapha ya pass ku number 10 kuna Manchester United lengicabanga ukuthi labanengi balendzele be Manchester United abakufisi ke lokho ukuthi kama ku number 10
tijembe te Manchester ngihlale ngitithokotela Master. That marks the end of our show today, Master. We'll see how Arsenal the City dawo kanjani. Thank you for staying with us. Asikubone kusasa, nisale kahle.